My name's Jon Leon, and I play in the band White Wizzard.
We are a traditional heavy metal band. Obvious influences: Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Rush, Scorpions, all the NWOTHM stuff, a little bit of the early thrash stuff. That's the music, the heavy metal that I got into at a very young age that has always stayed with me. It's got a certain power to it when you mix great vocals, great songwriting, great melody. There's only so many bands out there that do it great, and I wanted to kind of take on the challenge of trying to make a band in the modern age that could do that. And we've done about 5 records worldwide that I'm super proud of, and we're still going, trying to continue to fly the flag for traditional metal. Traditional heavy metal is, I think, kind of the hardest in the genre to pull off. That's why there's so many few bands that pull it off well. You have to have an incredible singer, someone that can hit a lot of notes, that has a lot of melodic range, that also has power to, be able to be heard and felt above a 2-guitar attack with huge drums and bass coming at you, like a freight train. So there's very few singers that can really do that and do it well. That also love the genre, that feel it, and that evoke the right emotions for it. So just finding the right singer for this genre is very difficult. And then on top of that, you have to have songwriting that's really good. I think a lot of the traditional heavy metal has really good songwriting. Again, Scorpions, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Def Leppard. You go down the list of those bands, whether you like all their bodies of work or not, I don't think anyone can really deny that they're great songwriters. You could put Metallica in that realm too. They're really, really good songwriters consistently, and it takes great songs. I mean, of course, it takes great musicianship. Most of the musicians that play traditional heavy metal are at the top of their game. I mean, the drummers, the bass players, everybody is, put a lot of hours in on their instruments. They're very talented, and they have a cohesiveness, that tightness. And then, of course, a sense of melody, really, really great sense of melody. And then putting all of that together, and a willingness to go out there and get in tour buses and vans and, bring it to the masses. It takes a special breed to do that. We're all of us that do this genre. I don't think we're like your normal human beings. We're not meant for the 9-to-5 rat race, and we're kind of on the fringe. And that's what makes it cool too. That's what makes it different. And it's also an extremely powerful art form when you can actually put all those ingredients together and pull it off at that volume, at that level, with that kind of force. I mean, it's probably the most exciting. It's like the ultimate roller coaster, at the amusement park. You always look for that fastest roller coaster. In a way, that's traditional heavy metal to me. That's the really fun roller coaster that does all the cool shit, and that's what makes it fun. It's an adrenaline rush, and it's an adrenaline rush for the fans. It's also an adrenaline rush for us that play it, and there's a symbiotic exchange that's indescribable when it's all working. You see it when you go to an Iron Maiden concert. Part of the reason you go to a Maiden concert isn't just for the band, but it's for the energy that's evoked in the entire arena. There's nothing like it in the world. You can't get that anywhere else. As far as what you can do from how much room you have to expand in the genre, I think we have always embraced, kind of like the band Rush, to take chances. We're not always just traditional heavy metal, but it's at our roots, and it's a big part of our roots. And I think that's all that really matters. I think that there's always room to grow for every band. And some bands might just stay with one formula, and that's fine. You've got your bands like AC/DC, Iron Maiden, Slayer. They've always kind of stayed in a formula, and it really works for them. Or you can take chances like Rush, Judas Priest, or Metallica. Sometimes they get a lot of hate for that, but at the same time, they expand their palette and they bring something different to the table. But they're still metal bands. They still come from that same spirit that traditional heavy metal is. And I think it's really easy to put labels on things, but I think there's a lot of cross-pollination in the metal genre. For all the genres that seem to exist, and there's so many subgenres and so many opinions, there's so much cross-pollination within those genres, and I think it's just about having an open mind, both as a musician and a fan, and some bands have more open minds, some fans have more open minds, some don't, but at the end of the day, it's all heavy metal, man. So the difference between the 80s bands and the new wave of traditional heavy metal bands of now, I think as far as the industry goes, there's a huge difference, because in the 80s, there was so much money being generated. There was a big push. There was major labels behind everything. There was MTV, of course. You could get away with a lot. You know, Ozzy could snort ants and, you know, wake up in his own puke, and, the bands were babysitted. You know, they had managers and people on the road, and there was so much money being generated that you kind of could get away with a lot. Whereas now, you can't really do that. You know, you have to kind of, you have to do it out of a labor of love, because there's not a lot of money being generated anymore in this genre. A lot of the labels are outposts now. They're not really what they were before. Illegal downloading changed everything. There's not a lot of revenues coming in. So a lot of the bands that do that sound now, they're doing it out of complete love for the music, because when we all go on the road, it's a grind. There's not a lot of money being made. We all have to have a lot of pans in the fire when we get off the road to survive. But in a way, that's really cool, because it makes it not pretentious. You know, that we're all doing it because we love it. There's no other reason we're doing it. Every band in this genre, or even closely related to this genre, that's come out in the last 10 or 15 years, is doing it strictly because they love it so much. And that's what keeps me going. All these bands in the genre influence me, and I hope vice versa. And I hope we all continue to make great traditional heavy metal as long as we can. Hearing any traditional heavy metal bands in the early 2000s. For me, that was the darkest point of metal. To me, when Limp Bizkit came out, everything just started going downhill from there. You had these bands that were either emulating Lane Staley. How many bands came out that were doing that kind of sounding vocal? You had, I'm not going to name names, but we all know who they were. There was a ton of them, and they were doing a regurgitated kind of Alice in Chains on AM radio kind of sound. Everybody was pushing it. The industry was falling apart due to downloading and just throwing whatever they could out there, seeing if it could stick. I just remember the metal genre just being filled with just uninspiring garbage. I was totally uninspired by everything coming across the airwaves in the early 2000s. There was bands that were, in spite of radio coming out, like say Opeth or Meshuggah, bands that had these interesting, I really obviously love prog music as well, and you'll hear that in my band's influences. So I appreciated bands like that had prog. I had to seek it out. Or interesting progressive bands like Porcupine Tree. A lot of stuff coming out of Europe was interesting, but that wasn't what was coming across the radio waves, especially in the States. You had to seek that stuff out. What was coming across the radio waves was, Limp Bizkit and Creed and Stained and, all those types of bands, So it was a weird time, in metal. And I just wasn't feeling it. I didn't like it. So I was really completely out of the loop. And like I said, what got me back into wanting to make a metal band and kind of stick it to all that metal that was coming out that I couldn't stand was going and seeing Willie John Roth when he would come around and play, and I'd go see him every year that he would come into town, and I really, really, really just rediscovered my love for all that kind of music, which to me is a completely different universe than the metal or whatever you want to call it that was coming out in the early 2000s. So for me, bringing that back to the modern age was something I wanted to do because I love it so much. And I felt like it was just missing. It was MIA. And as bands started to come back, Iron Maiden, of course, reformed in the early 2000s, but they gained momentum into the mid and late 2000s and started to become just a huger force than they ever were. Ronnie James Dio rejoined Heaven and Hell. All these Ozfest started bringing back some of the really great bands, Judas Priest, Slayer, a lot of different bands, Iron Maiden famously. So it all was culminating into also at the same time, the timing worked out, I guess, to where I was getting back into it as well. And that's what made it happen. I wasn't paying attention to what was going on at all with any other bands doing that sound. I just did it out of a love for it and a want to. Luckily, there were obviously other musicians worldwide that were feeling the same way, whether it was Olaf from Enforcer or a lot of the other guys out there that were doing the bands that were first coming out doing the sound. you know, they also had their own stamp they wanted to put on it. And they all brought something different to the table. And before you know it, there was kind of, you know, a few of us bands worldwide doing it. And I think that that was pretty exciting to see. And I'm glad that a lot of those bands continue to survive and keep doing it. You know, like, we love it. That's why we're doing it. And I think that's what's the coolest part about it is, for the most part, every one of these bands isn't pretentious or contrived. When I formed White Wizzard, it was completely 100% against the grain of what was going on in LA at the time. Like, a lot of musicians get caught up in, oh, we got to do whatever's getting signed right now or whatever's perceived as cool. Whereas I just did what I loved. And I think everybody in the traditional heavy metal genre, that's what they're doing. They're doing what they love. It's not pretentious. It's not for reasons of what other people are going to like, or for getting signed, or for their egos. It's literally just because we love this shit so much. As far as other bands in the traditional heavy metal, you know, canon here in the modern age, I mean, I didn't really know about any of them when I formed White Wizzard. I literally did this just on my own here in LA. I wasn't really paying attention. But once we started getting some recognition, I started to discover a lot of these bands, whether it was these great bands from Canada like Skullfist, Cauldron, Striker, or overseas like Enforcer, who, you know, I think they're great. And I really loved all of it. I think it's great. I think, you know, White Wizzard, we have a lot of different influences. I've progressed the sound as we've gone. Our roots are definitely in traditional heavy metal, but we bring a lot of influences as we've moved forward. But we definitely completely and totally appreciate all the other bands in the genre, and I think everybody brings something great to the table. And we'll continue to always draw off of the roots of traditional heavy metal in everything that we do, along with the other influences we draw off of, and that's what makes it great. And I think that all these bands do a great job. I think they're awesome. We hope to tour with some in the future, and we don't plan on stopping anytime soon. And I think that you know, all these bands are great. And again, it's all, you can tell everybody does it because they just love this music so much, and it's infectious. I think it makes its way into the music, the passion, the depth of love for it, and I think the fans feel that, and it's a great exchange. So I'm totally stoked to be doing this kind of music, and I hope that all these bands keep going for a long time. As far as influences, you know, obviously when I formed White Wizzard, I had kind of, you know, come full circle to all of the influences that made me be a musician in the first place. You know, I used to sit in my parents' house late at night after they would fall asleep, and I had this VHS recording of Live After Death by Iron Maiden, and I would just sneak whiskey or brandy out of my dad's liquor cabinet, you know, and watch Live After Death over and over and over again. I was obsessed with it, and it made me want to be a bass player. That's why I got a bass, was because of Steve Harris and, of course, Geddy Lee from Rush. I would put on the Hemispheres album by Rush and air bass in my living room in the morning in between my bong hits and Captain Crunch before high school, you know, trying to master the air bass of Geddy Lee. And that was really what got me started, was bands like Rush and Maiden. And then, of course, it grew from there. You know, you hang out in the record store as a kid and you start buying vinyl. You know, I was getting Judas Priest records, and then you get into the NWOTHM stuff and the obscure stuff. And, of course, the 70s stuff like Uli Jon Roth Scorpions and UFO. And it all just kind of comes together and becomes kind of a lifestyle. And in my early years, in my junior high and early high school days, that's what got me through all that stuff. You know, all the problems at home, all the craziness of life. It was empowering. It was uplifting. It made me feel you know, like I had a purpose, a reason to keep going and living beyond just the mundane aspects of school and what society says you need to be. I was kind of rebellious as a kid in the first place. So those influences, they really, really had an effect on me. And as I moved forward in life, you know, a lot of things happen. You know, all of a sudden the heavy metal genre changed, right? You had all of a sudden, you know, Bruce Dickinson quit Iron Maiden. Rob Halford quit Judas Priest. Ozzy put out Mama, I'm Coming Home. I mean, what the heck was that? You know, you had all these things happen. Metallica and Queensryche kind of sold out and did records that made them a lot of money, but really didn't have any thought-provoking lyrics anymore. And then all of a sudden, grunge was there, and Eddie Vedder 24 hours a day, and you're going, what the hell happened here? And when that happened, I kind of got out of metal for a while. I kind of started to drift into other genres and world music and all these different things. And then what got me back into heavy metal and really started to light that fire of my influences and why I became a musician was when Uli Jon Roth started coming on tour in the early 2000s in Los Angeles. And I would go see him, and he would play those old Scorpions songs. And it just... I went and got those old Scorpions records out, like in Trance and all those different awesome albums, and started rediscovering my love for the genre. And then I went to a Heaven and Hell concert when Dio got back with Sabbath, and it was kind of, I was off to the races at that point. I was playing in some bands I wasn't really happy with, and I said, you know what, I need to do something. I want to make the band that I want to make in the spirit of those bands, but for the modern age. It wasn't really popular at the time. That wasn't anything anyone was doing in Los Angeles, that's for sure. And I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on in Europe, but I just did it out of the love for doing it. It was all about the music. And I think that's exemplified in the first EP and beyond in what we do. And it still continues to be. We love it. We love that kind of music. And we just love playing it and writing it, recording it. And we're going to continue to do it until we can't anymore. And that's what it's all about. Why not play different genres of metal or stuff that's more popular? I mean, I didn't get into this for any of that. Like literally, what was popular when I formed this band were bands that I just couldn't stand. And, you know, I just did this out of the love for the music, and come what may otherwise. I mean, if people love it, great, but I'm not going to stop doing it for the sake of, you know, not enough people loving it or people telling me I should do something different. I mean, this is what I love. And what I love about it is it's in a way is the most deep and complex aspect of what you can do with the heavy metal genre. Again, having really great vocals that can soar above all that stuff. It's really hard to do that, to write songs that can really be evoked in a powerful way with melodic structure and just a complete adrenaline rush and high octane. That's what it's all about. And those other genres, you know, they're cool. I know a lot of people like them, but, you know, you got to do what speaks to you as an artist, as well as listen to what speaks to you as a fan. And there's so many different types of subgenres out there now. You know, your head will spin if you try to understand all of them, especially in heavy metal. But at the core of what we do, and I think what a lot of the bands in this genre try to do, is bring really great songwriting, really great melodic structure, and really great vocals to make a powerful musical force that's just unyielding in its relentlessness, yet at the same time is so crossoverable and listenable to the average person. And that's a really hard thing to do. And that's what makes it fun, is it's a genre that can kind of appeal to everybody in a way. And at the same time, you're not trying to do that. It's not formulaic. It's just something that happens naturally through the writing and through the playing of it, because the good energy that you evoke is infectious. The love for it, the passion is infectious. And I think that makes its way to the fans, and it's a great exchange, and there's nothing like it in the world. So as far as who traditional heavy metal is for, or whether or not elitists think it's cool or not, I think it's kind of irrelevant. You know, yeah, it's an older genre, I guess. It depends on how you want to label it, but I think it's come full circle. I think a lot of the bands from back in the day are more popular than they've ever been. I think the genre is more popular than it's ever been. And I feel like there's just another resurgence happening of this type of music. I think it's timeless. I don't think it can be married to a particular time era. So, you know, whether it's the type of clothing people wear or want to present the look of the bands, whether or not they evoke a time in the past, I still think it's relevant now. And I think that all the bands that are doing it now have their own stamp to put on it. And I think that it will continue on forever. I think this music is timeless. I think that that's the beauty of music. In a lot of ways, I'm a musical spiritualist. It's the only religion I have. And that's the purest communication there is in the universe as far as I'm concerned. So, you know, it's a big part of my life. I think it's a big part of all of our lives, and I think it's not contrived. It's pure truth. We all love it, and who cares what elitists think or, you know, anyone else thinks? If you love it and you're into it, then there's nothing more metal than putting your finger in the air and saying, this is my genre, I love it, this is the music I like. And that's with any music. You know, just whatever you like in life, whatever your passions are, whatever you believe in, do it unequivocally and don't give a fucking shit what anybody thinks, because that's what it's all about. And that's what this genre is about as well. That's the exclamation point of it, is saying, you know what? We don't care what you think. We're going to do what we love. I don't care what you think. I'm going to be who I want to be. I'm going to do what I want to do. And fuck you if you got a problem with it. And I think that kind of mentality can carry you through so many things. You know, George Carlin famously said in an interview once, he said, you can accomplish a lot in life when you don't give a shit. And, you know, I think what that really means is you can accomplish a lot in life when you don't care what anybody thinks, when you just stay true to your vision, true to your passion, and you don't give a shit what anybody's going to say. You don't care what the critics say. I think that's what's beautiful about this genre too, is all these bands, they're just doing it because they love it. Come what may, you're going to either like it or you're not, but we're not going to change because somebody doesn't like it. We're not affected by what people think. We just follow our passion and our love for the music. And I think that traditional heavy metal and heavy metal in general, and just the spirit that it evokes, will be around forever. And I'm really thrilled to be a part of it. I really respect all the different bands that are doing it. And we can't wait to continue to roll forward and make more music and be a part of the wave, man.